All right, folks, we'll get started then. I will call the February 22nd, 2023 Taxicab Advisory Committee meeting to order. If we can begin with the roll call, please.
Shawnee Rivera,
Present.
Abel Seifu. Abel Seifu. Austin Hodoya. Just a reminder to the board members or the committee members, sorry. If you can turn your mic on to acknowledge when you're here for the record and whenever you make a comment hereafter. So Austin Hodoya.
Present.
Thank you. Alfred Banks.
Here.
Akbar Majid.
Present.
Antonio Hueso. Oh,
There it is. Here.
thank you. David Taysom.
David Kasem's here.
George Abraham.
Yes, I'm here.
Karen Higadera. Luis Vasquez.
Present.
Mark Nichols.
Mark Nichols present.
Margot Tangwai.
Present.
Michael Trimble. Michael Sullivan.
Present.
Mikhail Hussein.
Peter Zishi here is his alternate.
Thank you. And then Zuad Jirma.
Present.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Dalia. Let's then move on to the approval of minutes from the November 16th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Actually, I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Taysom. All members in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. And that passes unanimously. Let's move to item 3, please, the non-agenda public comment.
We do not have any, Chair.
All right. Then let's go to item 4. Lenny.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Taxicab Advisory Committee members. Agenda number 4, as we do every year, is the calculation of the maximum rates of fare for hire vehicle administration. Publishes these rates of fare at the first Taxicab Advisory Committee meeting of the year, and the rates of fare are based on the changes to the prior year of the Consumer Price Index. Based on those calculations, the rates of fare for the 2023 year will be $3.80 flag drop, $4.10 per mile rate, and $33 waiting time. For those taxi cabs that are equipped with technology that allows a receipt to be sent electronically, we do allow those taxi cabs to add an additional 6% to the maximum rate of fare. And for those cabs, the flag drop would be $4. The per mile rate is $4.30. And the per hour waiting time would be $35. As of today, any taxi cab permit holder may adopt those maximum rates of fare. They will be published in our for hire vehicle administration website. And those changes to those meters need to be performed by an authorized service agent in order to be valid. The adoption of the maximum rates of fare is totally optional. There are concerns from some permit holders that are conscientious of the market competition with TNCs. They can choose not to change the rates and keep them as the same as the last year's maximum rates of fare, or they can adopt the new ones now that they're authorized. There are no additional steps if a taxi cab charges equal or less than the maximum rates of fare that we just mentioned. Once again, any taxi cab that is equipped with that technology, with a point of sale technology that's allows for a credit card acceptance and for electronic receipts to be conveyed to the passenger may charge an extra 6%. In those cases, those taxi cab companies or those permit holders do need to contact our office. That way our inspectors can ascertain that the equipment installed in that taxi cab allows or qualifies for that 6% additional rate. And once again, changes to the maximum taximeter rates must be performed by an authorized service agent. It should be noted that these rates are the highest that we've ever had in the city of San Diego, and this is all related to the overall inflation that the United States experienced. And once again, it's based on the changes to the Consumer Price Index, which is published by the Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is the basis for our policy, which is policy 34, in which we we use that formula to develop the new, or compute, I should say, the new fares every year. Any questions?
If I may,
Mr. Rizzo, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think the last time we went through this exercise last year, it was a misunderstanding in our industry, and I'm just reiterating an issue that might come again before us, that a lot of people thought it was a required change. So a lot of people went out and changed their rates of fare and later on found out that that was not the case. So I hope anybody that's here in today's meeting emphasizes that this is voluntary. And we do our part to keep our inflation down by trying to minimize the increases that we actually input in our cabs, because it does affect our transportation clients and also our industry and overall inflation. So just making that recommendation that everybody bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. We'll go to Margot and then Peter.
I will remind everyone that we do have a rule that we can charge less than the meter. This started when the lease program went in. Most of my customers cannot even afford what's on the meter, and we are running the $3 meter. We have an inflation problem. The gas is going back up again. It's gone up a good 15 cents right now, and you're seeing more and more $5 and $6 gallons for the 87. I would hope that we could maintain where we are. As I say, it's when we're doing medical vouchers, and we're not even seeing the full meter for that. And these folks, when you listen to their stories as we're going along, you kind of cry a little and try to help out a little bit, do a little extra to get the groceries and stuff. My regular customers are all limited on their money. So going up to this $5 business is really stiff. And there's very few people who can afford it. And it would be nice to be able to stop some of the inflation that's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Alfred, go ahead, and then we could go to Peter after that.
So this option that people can change, so people can change their meter or leave the old as it is, right? And also the driver have the right to give a deal to the customer when they're going forward. They can charge them less rather than just what the meter say, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Banks. Our ordinance does allow any permit holder and any taxi cab driver to charge less, equal or less than the maximum rate of fare. That provides discretion to the driver for any particular trips, but so long as the fare is less than what the maximum rates are, which are posted on the screen, you are correct, drivers can always charge equal or less.
Thank you.
We'll go back to Peter and then to you, Margo. Oh, you didn't have anything?
No.
All right. Margo?
I understand that these rates have been approved already. I flinch at what we're looking at, but on the other hand, I think we need to approve what the maximum rates are because it's only fair to some guys. We're all sitting tight on the money. But if some guys want to raise it to that, then it's legal that we should be able to approve it via our taxi committee.
Thank you, Margot. The rates, when we did a policy change, policy 34 back in 2019, allowed us to present these rates as an informational item to the committee. There's no voting or need or approval needed for any permit holder to adopt these rates if they so choose.
Amen.
All right, any additional questions or, yes?
Okay, sorry for coming late. I just have the question about the feedback that we're gonna get from the customers if we change this rate, you know. Currently, people are telling us it's already too high. People especially going to far away from the airport, and I had incident with a customer telling, I'm not gonna pay this much money, you know, this is more than my plane ticket. So right now, what's gonna happen is if we allow this thing to happen, a lot of drivers gonna change the meter and the issue is gonna get even worse. So I'd like to get the feedback from this group, how the drivers gonna react. If we're gonna have a lot of negative reaction from the customers, how they're gonna point their fingers on the drivers, they're gonna point their fingers on this group, and they're gonna even point their fingers on the city or to allow this thing to happen. So I just wanna know what this group think about. Well, we're gonna face a lot of reaction from the customers. And I wanna get the feedback from all of you guys, if possible. Thank you.
Lenny, I don't know if you had a response. I know that we heard a comment before about this being a maximum, right? So a ceiling rather than a mandatory amount that must be charged. But obviously there's folks who are practitioners here who can speak to what that reality looks like. David, you.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to talk to you directly. I have seen this rate of the new rate of 333, 50, 28. When we first voted this last year, you all were afraid of going from 280 from 280 to 330. You all were afraid for like 4 months. Then all of a sudden, 4 months later, when you started talking to the drivers about the new rates of fare, all of a sudden everybody wanted the new rates of fare. Now we're pushing at the maximum now. I don't know why you're saying that everybody's gonna complain. Nobody's complaining because they don't see our rates until they get in the car and they drive away. That's it. We don't have anything on the doors, nothing. So the customers do not know how much we're charging them until they get in the car. And that is because of the new regulations. So if you're complaining about the customer going to complain, the only people who are going to complain are the locals. The airport people, the people who go from the cabs to the airport, I'm going to take a cab no matter what. They're going to go downtown, they're going to go to Mission Valley, whatever, because their company authorizes repair. They don't care. But the thing is the only people who are going to care are the people who are locals and the people who are on vacation. People who are here on business don't care.
I totally disagree because I had incidents in the past where people from come out of town, they just.
Yeah. Yeah,
so-
you've had other instances, yes,
Yeah.
and I've had those instances too,
yeah,
but
so-
I've never raised my meter to reflect that. Why?
Okay, how about people who already raised their meter? That's gonna be the issue.
Sir, you were told.
So we want to make sure there's other opportunities for folks to weigh in here. Agustin, I think you had some comments and then we'll go over here.
Yeah, I think the rates should stay as they are. I mean, because some folks can pay, but some can't, especially with like locals, going to the store, whatever, they just can afford it. So, and they call us in an Uber when the price goes up because they can afford us. So check up the price to $5 for the flag fair. It's not gonna be fair for the community, you know, so I think to stay as they are. That was my 5 cents.
Okay, first it mentioned it's optional. We don't have to charge the meter price.
That's
Thanks
correct.
for bringing that up. So I talked to 10 out of 5 drivers are okay with the race, by the way. I
Yeah,
talked to
I-
drivers
Mr.
before we get to this meeting, so it's optional. You don't have to charge the posted price. And then passengers have no idea about the price, or they don't stop there and negotiate with the driver, just get in and go. That's it. So it's optional. You don't have to charge the posted price.
Peter?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have to remember that we're independent business people. And it's your business. You can run you have the maximum rate. You can run your business any way you want to with a lower rate. That's your decision to make. You know who your customer base is. You know who you serve in the community. If you think that the maximum rate isn't good for you, then don't use it. That's your business. Other people serve other parts of the market. They think they can get the maximum rate. Let them charge the maximum rate. That's their business. You're small business people. There's hundreds of you. You can make up your minds like to who you want to serve and how you want to charge. For me, everybody likes to get a deal. If you told everybody, you know what, the maximum rate is this, but I'm going to give you a 30% discount, my businesses. People would probably like that. Everybody likes a discount. So it's just a matter of who you want to serve and how you want to market your business. And that's why you're an independent businessman, because you can make those decisions for yourself. It's a big city. There's a lot of different kinds of customers. Who do you want to serve? How much do you think they'll pay? Figure out a nice way to give them the deal they want and take credit for it. And you'll make money. If you don't want to, so I think you just have to decide for yourself, what part of the business do you want? And how can you sell it? And different people have different parts of the business.
But Peter, that's not happening. That's the issue we are having. Everyone have the same meter. Everyone is getting the maximum meter right now. And you don't see it. Maybe you have 5% out there who has the lowest meter. But if you're gonna allow this thing to happen, then we're gonna have another issue. That's my point.
All right, thank you for that. This is an information item only, so there's no vote here. Lenny, just essentially an update, correct?
That is correct. Every year, once again, we publish the maximum rates of fare based on the changes in the consumer price index. And if I may add, Chair, the consumer price index is becoming the norm for many regulatory agencies in terms of being a fair and subjective method of calculating rates. The consumer price index for the transportation industry, it's itemized and also localized for the San Diego area region. And it takes into account all the prices that are related to the transportation industry in terms of gas, number one, vehicle maintenance, auto parts. So that is a very fair and, once again, objective method to calculating rates. So to finalize, it is optional. As Mr. Sichi mentioned, this allows permit holders to determine their own compensation in terms what it is allowed as far as a maximum rate from a consumer protection standpoint that is based on a very objective method that's published and that's driven, I should say, by the yearly inflation. In this case, once again, they're high because we've experienced, as we all know, a rise in inflation, and we could expect these rates to lower in the following year in accordance to those changes if inflation goes down. So it should be noted for all the members and all permit holders to be aware and cognizant of the fact that these rates could go up or could very well come down based on the inflation next year.
Thanks, Lenny. Sure. We had one more comment here from Mr. Hagoyan, and then we'll move on to the next item.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Chair, we do have,
everything has been said, so.
we do have members of the public in the queue for this item.
Let's hear public comment then.
Alex Tegweng, please make your way to the podium. You can just.
It's ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman and the board members. I'm here to object the rate increase. To us, to the majority of the individual who own just one single taxi, this is totally like a nail on the coffin for our industry. Because we are the people who are there and who confront the customer every day. It is very obvious, like most of the customers will come and say, how much to XYZ? And we tell them 350 per mile. Immediately they will go back. So now from 350 to 410, totally change the customer from us. I know there is a fancy word there, optional. I really want to hear also the ground transportation to say something about that, because 85% of our business is from the airport. So are we gonna fight on the fare? Am I gonna compete with the first driver who has a 410 in meter and I'm behind him? I say, I'm here for 310, and somebody says, I'm here for 280. So it will create a little bit of confusion unless there is some kind of a setup thing. And we know you are going from the CPI, but for us, the way it is right now is better for our survival. Otherwise, systematically, we are almost about to leave the business, but now this will be a kind of our final, because it is, if the money is coming from the customer's pocket, it is very difficult for the customer to pay this thing. Mr. David says it's the company corporate card, blah, blah. It's not true. We are there as a driver. So for especially for full-time driver who are living on this business, it will be tough. For a part-time drivers who have some other benefit from a government, maybe can make sense. And also this board has to also consider about conflict of interest, why some people are pushing for the meter change. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right.
Oh,
We got one
we have
more.
several.
Okay.
Yeah. Henry Ago, please make your way to the podium.
Thank you, Chairman and board members. I'm here to object the tax, the increment for some obvious reasons. Dave said something about the idea that is optional. We don't want a situation that will create this thing at the airport, somebody charging different fare. I thought what we had is 1 meter. And if we have 1 meter, how come you're giving them a different a break? I'm giving, so that will cause a lot of commotion at the airport. And again, they mentioned about the locals. Already the locals have ways of moving around. They can offer something that is cheaper. So they have ways of moving around. So this increment will affect them a lot. So I think what we should do at the airport there, since like 80 or 90% of the business we get from the airport is just within downtown area. Then maybe we should have a flat rate for the for taxis originating from the airport. If you go to cities like Seattle, Washington, they have things from airport and areas that are called business district. They have a flat rate. That should be what we should be talking about, not this increment. What we had is okay, but this increment is something I will not be in support of it. And believe me, I know I'll be speaking on so many other people's opinion, kept drivers like me, their own opinion that this, we should not do this, at least not right now.
William Alozzi, please make your way to the podium.
Good afternoon. All protocols observed. My name is William. I'm here to oppose the fare hike for the taxi cab industry as at this very point in time. The reasons are very obvious. we've been struggling to stay in this business since starting from the COVID and the injection of ride share into the business that we are in. After the COVID, I mean, it took the Metropolitan Transport months of back and forth to get us to 280, 330 where we are now. That's like years before this increase. So if we had a 330 increase, that should be in 2021 or 2020. I wonder why we're in a haste within a space of less than 1 year to jump to 480. Secondly, if we look at it, just like a couple of my friends have stated here, we operating majority of the time at the airport. Customers come out there. Some had the erroneous impression that the taxi cab fare is high, when even at certain points, like on Thursday, I pick up a passenger from Terminal 2 going to a Republic Hotel on the Third Avenue, where at the former W Hotel. His this thing was showing that Lyft was charging him $49. My meter is about $18. But if you go across the street over there for the ride share, the line is like 10 times what is on the taxi cab location, because that erroneous impression is there that the taxi cab is high. So if they have an ink again that we had a fare hike, I believe that is the end of our business. Sorry, gentlemen, if anybody is thinking about an increase as at this point in time, you should hold it. And another thing, looking at it the other way around, we have the competitors like Uber, Lyft, and of course, I don't know whether Yellow Cab is part of the taxi cab now, because we are running on
30 seconds.
280 and Yellow Cab is still running on 380 and we're 280, we're on 3 something. So if we go extra high, it then means we have these other people down there whose prices are way below our price. That means most of us will be taken out, and I don't have any other job now. I've tried to apply most of other places. The age is not on my side, getting a new job now. So this is the only job I have. Please save it for me. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
All right, now we can go ahead and move to item number 5. Lenny, if you'd like to introduce that item.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 5 is a fiscal year 2023 amended budget forecast, and that will be presented by Gordon Meyer, who is MTS Budget Supervisor.
Come on up, Gordon.
Good afternoon. My name is Gordon Meyer. I'm the Operating Budget Supervisor here at MTS. Today, I'm going to give you an update on the For-Hire Vehicle Administration operating budget, specifically what we're proposing for the FY23 amended budget. So first, we'll take a look at how the operating revenues within the department are trending. We have the operating revenues broken into 2 categories. First, we have the annual regulatory fees. So that's the 440 and 350 annual fee that you guys are very familiar with. In the original budget, we had projected $431,000 of this revenue, and we are bumping that up by about $63,000 in the amended budget forecast. The original budget had assumed a little under 1,100 permits, but we're bumping that number up based on how we're the active permit number so far, as well as our projected write-offs. The next category, we have processing and other fees. So that includes the application revenues, the driver class training revenue, and then any of the other ancillary fees on our fee schedule. So here we had budgeted 156,000 originally, and we're bumping that number up by about 60,000 and projecting 216,000 in total for FY23. So if you look at the bottom line here, we are projecting about 711,000 in operating revenues, which is an increase of about 124K from our original projection. So we are seeing good signs on the revenue front. Moving on to expenses for the department. So personnel costs, we are bumping up by about 37,000 or 8% from the original budget. And the reason for that is that we hired a new administrative assistant in January. And this wasn't a new position that was approved for the department. It was actually an open position that we left open while we got a better sense of how the budget was going to perform. And so they just started in January. And so what you're seeing is about a half year of salary and fringe expenses added to the budget. Next line, we have outside services. So here we're reducing the budget by about $5,700. And that's, we had some small contracts. I think we had it was a contract for lift maintenance as well as a janitorial contract that were specific to the old location. And since moving to the new location across the street, we no longer need to include those costs. So we're removing that. Materials and supplies, we're essentially leaving flat at about $500. Energy, we're tracking close there so far through the first half of the year. So we're leaving that at 7,000. Risk management, so we're leaving that at 9,000. That's a number that we already know. It's a once a year annual, it's called the Special Liability Insurance Program. So it's a premium we have to pay for this department once a year. G&A or general and administration costs we're reducing by a little under 10,000. And that is primarily because we reduced the budget for merchant fees related to credit card payments. Because we were not able to successfully launch that program, we don't need to budget the merchant fees. So we removed that. And then we also brought down the expense budget for the non-revenue vehicle lease to reflect our current enterprise lease costs. And then the overhead allocation, that's an allocation of the various MTS administrative functions that we're not expecting to change there as well. So all in all, total expenses are projected to increase by about 22,000, all of which is because we hired the new position for the second half of the year. So when we look at our revenues and expenses combined, you can see the third line down. So that's a positive number, means we're projecting a surplus. So we are projecting a surplus this year of about 87,000. And the for-hire vehicle administration is a self-funded entity, meaning that all of its expenses have to be funded by its own operating revenues. So anytime we have an operating surplus, that surplus gets added to the contingency reserve. And then anytime we have a deficit, we have to use the contingency reserve to fund the operations of this department. And so we are projecting an $87,000 surplus this year. And to kind of put that into perspective with the reserves, have a brief history of the last couple of years, as well as where we stand today and where we're projecting for the end of this fiscal year. So at the end of FY21, a couple years ago, we had 411,000 in our reserves. Then last fiscal year, we added 112,000 to reserves after we had the permit volumes come in stronger than we had anticipated. So we ended FY22 with 523,000 in reserves, and that is our balance as of today. And it's the audited balance, and that number won't be impacted again until the end of this fiscal year, where we'll see how we actually end in terms of a surplus or deficit. But we are projecting an $87,000 surplus. So we plan on having close to 610,000 in the reserves at the end of this fiscal year. And then last slide here, we have kind of a high level projection of revenues and expenses and what that looks like for the reserves, as well as kind of give us a sense of whether we need to make any regulatory fee price changes. So on the operating revenues, which is the top line, if we leave that number flat for the next couple of years, which is basically assuming the same 1,264 permits that we're projecting this year, and no changes to the regulatory fees, so leaving them at 440 and 350. And then on the expense side, in FY24, we include a full year of the administrative assistant that we just hired, and then we assume some 3% inflation for the next couple of years. So if those high level assumptions were to hold true, you can see the net operating income loss. It's still positive over the next few years in the short term. It is shrinking, but not at an alarming rate. And I think the important line here also is at the bottom where it's a projected contingency reserve balance. So through the next couple of years, we're still projected to gradually be increasing the reserves. And so at this time, there is no clear need to definitely not increase the regulatory fee from their reduced levels. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gordon. Do we have public comment?
We do not, Chair.
All right. Are there any member?
I have a question, and I think it's an opportunity here to realize that if our regulatory fees are going to be pretty much what we're set right now, the coming year, it's an opportunity to look at possibly if legally this committee can put some input on either giving assistance, if it's not to our industry people that are victimized, it can be, we used to have a ride sharing program for the needy, for people that were challenged economically, and maybe we might want to explore something like that as to how we can help not only our industry, but our client base with the reserves that we have if we continue at this pace, because it looks like we're collecting sufficient funds to offset our cost recovery. I think that's an opportunity that we should explore and see what we can do in regards to that. I don't know if this body can recommend that, but I think we're advisors here, but at the same time, it continues to be if it continues to be on that projection, I think it's an opportunity for us to, if we don't take advantage of that, I mean, we won't be able to do other things. We're just, keeping the same track. And from what I heard from our prior discussion topic, that people are repeating the same thing. They're concerned about rates, and this is an opportunity probably to help out. I don't know what people think, but we should find out if legally we can do something like that.
Do we have a sense of sort of programs that might be able to be funded with funds that are derived from a fee?
Thank you, Gordon. We don't, Chair. This is a new concept that Mr. Wesso has brought up, but we can certainly explore. In the past, I might say that there have been other ideas in terms, not along with what Mr. Wesso said, but for technology, that could, for utilize of technology, introduction of technology, video cameras for the cabs, which is an industry standard in some other places, but we have never considered this before. But if the committee suggests, we're certainly open to explore possibilities.
Thank you. I don't, we can circle back on figuring out a good way to communicate what the options might be, but also obviously, reserves are there for a reason. There's a healthy amount to have. Also noting that, when we hit that healthy amount and we're kind of in a safe place, relatively safe, how might we utilize those funds to the best interest of the industry and the community as a whole? I think that's a good point. Akbar?
That's a great idea, Tony. However, as the number of permits increase, are you anticipating hiring more staff?
Not at the moment. The goal of the administration was to stabilize operational costs. And the number one concern from this committee and all permit holders was certainly the most impactful impacting, I should say, operational costs for permit holders is the annual regulatory fee. We managed to do that with several cost-saving measures that we've covered in past meetings. And as Mr. Mayor mentioned a minute ago, we are in a position where we can stabilize that regulatory fee to the lowest rate that some members like yourself, Mr. Majid, can ascertain has been the lowest since 2014, if I'm not mistaken, when it was at $500. So that is our main goal. And once again, to provide speedy and good customer service to all our permit holders in terms of processing applications and being able to provide efficiency. That's the term that I'm looking for not only for applications, but for every need for permit holders. And as of now, we will reassess. We always do based on an increase of permits, which we are experiencing. I'll cover that here in a little bit. And then at that time, we will always reassess the needs of the department and then go back to the planning phase in terms of needing and hiring more personnel or staying as we are with the main objective of providing cost certainty to the industry in terms of a stable regulatory fee.
Thank you. I know you've done a fantastic job of managing the costs, and thank you for doing that. But just for the record, I don't think this money should burn a hole in our pocket because trends are going, the way I see the trends, the number of permits are increasing, and you're gonna run into a situation where you're gonna have to hire more staff, whether it's for permit issuance purposes or compliance purposes, whatever the case may be. And I don't want to be in a predicament where the regulatory fees would go through the roof again. So let's not be in a rush to burn that. We have done this before. At one point, we had over $2 million in reserves, and we decided to reduce the regulatory fees. But there's a purpose for that for a rainy day. So you might have to increase your staff, and next year we may have to raise the regulatory fees. Let's not be in a rush to burn through that money. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
All right. Peter?
Yeah, I think one thing I think would be helpful is if someone came up with an idea of what a policy recommendation would be for amount of reserves. Different agencies operate differently, but most agencies have an idea of like what level of reserves is good for them. So I think that would be one thing that would be helpful for this committee to decide where we're at. Second of all, I have a question. Does any of this good fortune have anything to do with COVID funds that have come to the city, or are we separate from that?
No, completely. These
Okay.
numbers are based
So
completely
this
on
is
our
just
customer.
what we're generating through our own, okay.
Correct.
So I would recommend that we come back and look at other taxi agencies around the country perhaps and see what kind of reserves are there in our industry. But I would think in order for us to judge like where we're at, when we're doing well, is to have an idea like what do other people do? What's a should, what's an low level of what? I mean, when you said you had 2 million, it sounded like a lot. So then people would know, oh, we're above what's the normal or whatever people expect. But I think there's to be I'd like to see them come back. Some people come back and say, this would be a recommended level. This is what other people in other taxi agencies do around the country. That would help us make a judgment of where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no additional comments on this item, let's go ahead and move.
Well, before you
Yep.
move on, can I just suggest at least that we continue the topic on a subcommittee level? We can branch out and have that conversation because I think it does merit some value. And with respect, we're going to compare something that we're trying to set maybe a standard or something that possibly would work and others would follow us instead of us following somebody else's recommendations. I think we're very unique in what we do, the way we're organized, but I think we're going to miss an opportunity here to probably collaborate something that might be a useful tool for the future. It's just collaborate. Doesn't mean we're going to spend the money. It might just go back to helping, like Mr. Akbar says, we might need more resources to cover personnel. So but it's just a conversation to have it there and build on it. And if it does become something valuable, we use it.
Yeah, that certainly works for me. If folks are interested in continuing the conversation, if a non-quorum portion of this committee wants to discuss that, you want to reach out to our office or to Lenny. And then we can make sure the conversation continues and at that level, and then we can hear updates here for the whole group. Sound good? All right, great. With that, let's move to, thank you, Gordon, by the way, for the presentation there. Appreciate that. With that, let's move to item 6. Lenny?
Thank you, Chair. Item 6 is the 2023 regulatory fee payment update. We provide an update also at the beginning of the year, which is aligned with the regulatory fee payment period. This time around, it's just, once again, a not finalized update of the payments that are received because we're still in the middle of the payment period, which ends March 3rd. So for the last 2 years, we've been sending permit holders an MTS invoice, an electronic invoice directly to their email, which is on file, their current email on file with MTS. That is why it's really important for permit holders to provide us with an updated annual statement, which includes their contact information, such as address, phone number, and most importantly, email address for us to communicate with them and to send the invoices. So we send invoices to the permit holders via email. We are receiving payments via mail through our office drop box in our main lobby entrance of our new location, which is 116th Street, our Bus Yard Avenue, just a couple of blocks south from this building. And many permit holders find it convenient to just drop the payment in that drop box, or are also being collected in the field by our regulatory inspectors, mostly in the airport holding lot, which is like some other public comment. We heard that or the majority of the business in Taxicab is originating from the airport. So that has also been very convenient for both our staff to collect the payments and for permit holders to submit them. As of February 20th, out of 709 taxi permits that were billed, we've so far collected 40% renewal out of that total number. For the low-speed vehicles, just to 10%. We don't have many of those. And for the jitneys, we're still waiting for them to submit their payment, but as you can see, there's only 4 permits. As far as, and for those types of vehicles, taxi cabs, low-speed vehicles, and jitneys, the regulatory fee remained at the same amount as of last year at $350 per permit. As far as the non-emergency medical permits and the charter vehicle permits, those are, the regulatory fee for this year is $440, which is the same as it was last year. And as of February 20th, the renewals that we have received out of 494 non-emergency medical permits that were billed, we've only received a 1% renewal, and that's typical. As most of our companies, as we know from experience, the non-emergency medical companies, they submit their payments towards the end of the regulatory fee payment period, which is coming up March 3rd. And as of also March 3rd. Yeah, we'll cover it. And out of 91 charter vehicle permits that we built, we have received the majority of those permits submitted. As for the administrative fee schedule that we publish also every year, it was published in November, approved by our CEO. The permit holders that are not able to meet the March 3rd deadline, which is coming up here pretty soon, a couple of weeks, those permit holders are still able to submit a late regulatory fee payment by the end of that month, which is March 31st, with an addition of a $100 late payment fee. Payments can be made via personal checks or cashier checks or money orders. And permit holders who fail to pay the 2023 regulatory fee would have to reapply for voided permits. So it is important for everybody to recognize that we are providing some relief in terms of a late regulatory fee for those permit holders who are unable to pay by the deadline. But after March 31st, there will be no extensions, and those permits will unfortunately be voided. Void permits letters are sent afterwards to the permit holders, also via email. But in those cases, a permit holder would have to reapply. Payments can also be mailed directly via USPS to our main address, which is for Hire Vehicle Administration, 116th Street, San Diego, California, 92101. Again, deposited at our red drop box at the main lobby or collected by our regulatory inspectors in the field. Any questions on that item?
Thank you. Lenny, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not, Chair.
All right. Do we have any member comments? All right. Thank you, Lenny. With that,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Back when you said it was only 1% of the non-emergency medicals. So does that mean on March 3rd, you're gonna have them all paid? They're gonna pay by that date?
Correct, yes. And typically that industry
Yeah.
submits their payments towards the last week. So we get really busy. We're very busy as of now, but for the non-emergency industry, this is I would say typical. So nothing to worry about, but you're correct. They are supposed to submit those payments. Everybody is supposed to submit those payments by the deadline, which is March 3rd.
Marga?
Yeah, I remember that they've always been at the last minute, so that's nothing new. It said 402 and then 1%. It was only, yeah, the slide said 402. That's why I was questioning. Yeah, I did 1%. I understand the 1%, but yeah, see, it says, okay. It said 494 non-emergency medical, 402 permits, 1% renewal.
Thank you for pointing that out, Margot. It's 1%.
Next to the bottom line.
Correct, yes, I take notice of that. Just to clarify, it has been 1%. So it's not, we have not received that. That is a typo. I do apologize for that. So we can say, I believe it's only 42 payments, 42 permits out of the 494.
There he goes. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Margo.
All right. Thank you. Lenny, were you gonna add anything? Okay.
Oh, that concludes the agenda item.
yeah,
If there's
yeah.
no question.
No, all good. All right, let's move to the next item then.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 7, for hire vehicle industry emerging topics, partnerships between taxicabs and network transportation companies. As a background to this item, last year, MTS staff began talking about bringing an agenda item regarding emerging topics in the for-hire vehicle industry. We initially identified this topic as something that this committee would find interesting, believing at that time, any talks of a partnership between taxicabs and TNCs in San Diego would be many months away. Fast forward to today, this partnership idea has reached San Diego in the Southern California region. Today's presentation will be providing you with a brief overview of MTS's understanding of what this partnership between taxicabs and TNCs will likely look like. This partnership is something MTS has not brokered, has not been the lead on, or sponsored it. MTS has not even spoken to the TNCs about this partnership. This presentation's sole aim is to let our members and the public know that TNCs are ready to work with taxicabs and how these steps will look like. TNC companies have expressed an interest in adding additional modes of transportation to their e-hail platforms. In many cities, these e-hail platforms have already added different modes of transportation, such as e-scooters, e-bikes, limousines, non-emergency medical transportation, and now taxicabs. The Uber CEO, Derek Oroshabi, has stated that the Uber has plans to include every taxi cab in the United States on its app by 2025. In November, San Francisco Taxicab Uber, San Francisco Taxicab Uber partnership pilot program was launched and has shown to this date an increase in taxicab trips. As I mentioned, there are plans to expand this type of partnership to the Southern California region, including Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego. Yellow Cab informed MTS about this upcoming partnership. And MTS explored how, in terms of a regulatory, from a regulatory perspective, how that might look like. And those Yellow Cab trips that, when launched, if this partnership comes to fruition in the future weeks or in the future months, it's important to note that any Yellow Cab trip that is provided through the Uber app will be considered an Uber trip. If a passenger selects a taxi cab ride and agrees to the upfront fare provided by the Uber app, then that would meet and that would qualify that trip as an Uber trip. Since the fare pricing is based on the Uber app, a fare may be higher or lower than the taxi cab maximum rates of fare that we spoke about a couple of in the previous agenda item. A driver may choose to accept or decline a trip request, and no additional markings would be required for a taxi cab. For Hire Vehicle Administration will provide this committee with future updates on how this Yellow Cab and Uber partnership would look like and results in terms of potential increase on taxi cab rides. To conclude on this item, this is for all extensive purposes an Uber trip. As we all know, MTS does not have the authority to regulate TNC trips. MTS can regulate taxi cab trips, which are the finest trips that use a taxi cab meter or conduct street hails. These Uber trips are sometimes scheduled completely through the Uber app, and the upfront pricing is completely done in the app through the Uber algorithm. And thus, if a taxi cab driver elects a trip under the Uber platform, it is not by definition a taxi cab trip that MTS has any regulatory on. This is a new era, and we will do our best to keep informed on this progress. And when we know more, we do intend to bring more information and updates to the TAC. And to finalize the item, this is something new for the cities. San Francisco is still reporting results, and there are future intentions from other major metropolitan areas for taxicab to be added to several TNC platforms. So this is our response to technology, and we await to see further results. That concludes this item. We're open for questions.
Thank you, Lenny. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. We have a few.
Really quick, Dahlia, sorry, before we take that, I just wanted to note, I know Lenny mentioned this, I'm going to reiterate it as chair. Neither MTS, from everything I've heard, nor myself as the chair of this committee is in any way endorsing this idea. This is an information item only meant to provide you all with information to make sure that you all have the information related to programs, initiatives, other ideas, so you know what's coming, what may be coming. So again, I just want to make sure it's clear that me personally, I am not endorsing the idea of Uber getting involved down here, and MTS has not taken a position on that either. Dahlia, if you'd like to take public comment now, thank you.
William Johnson, please make your way to the podium.
All right. Hello, my name is Will Johnson. I am the union organizer at the United Taxi Workers of San Diego. I didn't bring my notes. I'll just go off. So there's a lot of problems with this it's not a proposal, it is a informational item. But there's significant issues with this in that they're allowing taxis to charge over the fare rate. It says that it'll be considered an upfront fare that can be either over or under the maximum rate of fare. Now, there's absolutely nowhere in Ordinance 11 that says that taxi drivers can charge over the fare rate. And anything that's and anytime that a passenger is in that vehicle, you have to have the flag dropped. Now, if you're if you haven't, anytime a passenger is in the car, whether or not it's a customer or whether or not it's a family member, that flag has to be dropped. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lenny. But yeah, so the basic problem is if a cab is taking an Uber ride, by MTS Ordinance 11, they have to drop that flag. They have to be running the meter anytime when there's a passenger in the car. And all of a sudden, we're allowing Uber and Yellow to subvert Ordinance 11 just so they can run the Uber app. I mean, we specifically have regulations for taxis here in San Diego, and now we're just going to simply ignore them. This seems absolutely wild to me, and we need to consider actively blocking this deal because it's going against our ordinance and our laws here in San Diego. Thank you.
Abebe Antailo, please make your way to the podium.
Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Bibi Antalo. I am independent cab driver, but affiliated with United Taxi Workers of San Diego. As you know, this item number 7 idea is, I don't know from where it came. It is like for taxi owners or for regulators, it is like penny wise, dollar foolish. Taxi is regulated. Uber is unregulated. Working with a regulated company, MTS as mediator, is like wiping out individual owners, individual independent drivers. This is, it won't work. Means get out of the business. It's to us, to you guys. You are out of business with me. Yellow, why, where were we? Where are we now? Where we were, look, when we were fighting for Medallia, what was the cause? Drivers being abused, overcharged, black market killed us. Now we are independent, working for ourselves, wiping us out, coming through. Now onward, if they think work, MTS will not be there. MTS will not be there. Or leave us, unregulate us. We be Uber too. They want money from us. They want a business with dominating company that taking our business. Not right, not right, not right. Don't take us back to fight. Please, MTS, you need to know, be conscious. You lose the money. 350 is coming from our pocket, not from Uber. Uber is when there is business. Uber charging like plane ticket, very high price, surcharge they say. When there is no business, they take lower. For lower, they take our fare because we sit down there, open our eyes and sit in the airport all people running there because of the price wise. Now they're merging one company from us, taking us back to that. So this is not right. I see last week, sitting there, customer came in, going to Scandido. Ask Uber.
Your time has
don't
expired.
Uber don't like the higher price because drivers don't make money when they go longer. The company makes money.
So we'll wrap up with one concluding statement.
Yeah, so Uber, merging Uber is killing independent drivers. Their apps, let them use them there, not on us. We will have our apps, but we work our own way, the way as regulated. So please stop that. Keep us on business or kill us. Thank you.
William Alozzi, please make your way to the podium.
Good afternoon once again. I'm sorry I have to step into this again. A couple of months or maybe sometime last year, we had a discussion here with the MTS on a meter. I think I think that should be Mr. I think is that you there, the gentleman there? So which the taxi cab drivers, I think vehemently opposed the idea of the meter regulating them. And then aside from that very issue, we had the issue of flat rate discussion with MTS. The issue was, we didn't hear much about it again. After you guys say you're gonna look into it and get back to us. Now, when we rejected the meter, which is part of the soft meter initially from Mr. Ahmed, it's like indirectly, we have yellow cab undercutting that operation, and MTS is allowing this. So if yellow cab should negotiate a deal with Uber as to undercut the taxi cab, so what MTS is trying to create is a scenario whereby you have, if the taxi cab on yellow cab fleet now running with Uber, one, we have a scenario whereby you claim you can't regulate Uber because it's above from the state. So if we're running with yellow cab under Uber, does MTS regulate the taxi cabs this time? So if you're not going to regulate the yellow cabs at that very time, then those of us independent taxi cabs within the city, you have no control over us. We will declare our independence. Because that's like we're creating a confusion here. So if we're gonna run this type of, I mean, it's like the idea of letting ride share come to the airport initially. We had the taxi cab industry was asking how many vehicles. We're dealing with companies that run on data, but that data was never provided. And then we asked what other thing again, it was never provided. This time around, MTS is not saying we don't know anything about it. And then by the presentation here, he mentioned this could take effect maybe next week or within a couple of weeks. So the arrangement was made in heaven and just drop into the city for it to be effected. That's too bogus, gentlemen. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll now turn to the committee members for any questions for Lenny and or comments. Lenny?
I just had a comment because it seems like we're going round and round on issues that are repeating themselves in history. San Francisco, when TNCs came on live in San Francisco, and that's where they originated. Taxi cab drivers had the option to use their app, Uber. They had the option to use Lyft. They had to use an option that was also offered to them by another TNC, and they were taxi cabs. I think if we've learned anything from open entry is that we can't do it all ourselves. That's number one. Number two, if drivers given that opportunity to have the use of that app, I think it's good to see that government's willing to test out things. I'm not hearing that they're implementing anything. They are gonna monitor and see where it goes. I understand that Yellow Cab of San Diego is connected with other yellow cabs in let's say Los Angeles, Orange County area. So they're negotiating as a cooperative, a bigger entity than just San Diego. It's not something new. It's something that's old. It's probably more than 10 years old and that taxi cabs are using the Uber app. Maybe not in San Diego, but I can see that it's going to happen in this regard. Taxi cabs are smaller. We're now independent. One operator goes out of service. I mean, most of them have the same hours of operation, and it leaves our industry, our city exposed to less service. That's why Uber has has a surge pricing. There's certain prices, certain hours of the day, there's not enough providers to provide service. So if we think we're going to stop this, I think it's already in play. It's just a matter of time. I think it's interesting to see that we're trying to stop innovation, and this is something innovative. Somebody's taking a gamble to see if this works. And that's what we need to do as industry members. What type of vehicle should we use to pay less costs? What type of fuel? We got to test things instead of following each other. A lot of us follow the lead. We raise the rates, let's all raise our rates. Everybody's using a Prius, let's use a Prius. We got to stop following the lead and try to be innovators. Try to see what difference we can make. Uber's setting a leading, they're taking a lead role here. They have been doing this. So we need to take lead roles too, not just follow the lead and complain. Let's see what we can do. And I'm interested in it already took place. It's just a matter of how much time, but what agreement they work out. Because it is interesting that we're going to have conflicts of, regulatory enforcement. So at what time does regulatory enforcement shut off to allow that? I know some San Diego drivers already using that Uber app. That's why we don't have markings on our top lights. The markings, they minimized it because some of you people are already using it here in San Diego. They're using the Uber app. It's just not a presentation like Yellow Cabs being accused, but some of our more innovative, I'm gonna call them innovators because they're trend setters. They're trying to use all options to make a living, to make it more opportunity, it's called. And Mr. Peters over here, Ziki, if I pronounce his last name correct, you have the option, do it or not. Again, we go back to if you want to do it or not. You want to support the platform or not. I just see it's an opportunity to see what comes out of it. And people might benefit out of it because it's more trips for you, potentially. So let's not close our doors. Let's see where it goes. And then we can critique something or make it better. But I think it's something that's going to happen because it's giving the consumer, again, the consumer an opportunity to have more opportunities to call somebody. And Uber has seen that they're going to attrition. What do I mean by attrition? A lot of drivers come in, a lot of drivers are leaving. They don't have enough players playing their platform, so they want to include cabs now because they need more opportunities like we need too. So let's see where it goes. Let's not shut the doors. Let's be open-minded, see where it goes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll just, quickly, I think we were anticipating this to be a passionate conversation. There'd be some engagement here. I hear you on the innovation piece. I think that the distinction here is that Uber got to do a test run without needing to produce any profit for like 10 years, right? So they had the luxury of being able to test things while being funded by large capital investors that the typical driver here doesn't have. They have to pay their rent, right? I know that you know this. It's just there is an apples and oranges comparison at play when we think about the amount of latitude that an Uber or a Lyft has to experiment versus someone who's got to make rent that month.
Well, publicly, I think government failed us at that time. We were very vocal and letting them know that even some of our, right now, our mayor, who was a council member, had stated he loved Uber.
Yeah.
And he didn't know that they were operating illegally. So government essentially failed us back then. And it's a growing curve. I don't want, we're going to be talking about this again.
Yeah.
Where government's got to get it right.
For sure.
If you're going to force us, you have to enforce them. You know, let's level the playing field.
Peter, and then we'll,
Yeah, I said, Tony, you called me out and I hadn't even talked yet. You don't even know what I'm gonna say. So immediately, as if, I don't know, so I don't know where that's coming from, but I'll just have to say a couple things here. First of all, I think this is gonna be, first of all, if people are complaining about confusions over maximum fare, this is gonna create confusion because someone's gonna go into a yellow cab and nobody's gonna know whether they're a passenger for yellow cab on their taxi or yellow cab is an Uber. And the customers will, I mean, individual customers will know, but I think taxi cab drivers by and large are going to be confused about what's going on even more than they are about whether someone charges the maximum rate or discounts a rate or whatever. And I think the problem with our ordinance is very opaque about making any distinctions here. So let me just show for you example. In section 1.18, it said a vehicle properly licensed under the jurisdiction of the California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC, is exempt unless such vehicle also provides transportation services regulated by MTS under this ordinance. So my question is, when is a taxi driver and covered by this ordinance? And when is a taxi driver an Uber driver and not covered by this ordinance? Do you know, Lenny?
Yes, Peter.
Good.
Like I mentioned in one of the slides, for all intents and purposes, if the trip is secured by the Uber app, then it is an Uber trip. This is a new concept that began in San Francisco, as I mentioned, in November. This is new. This is something that regulatory agencies are experiencing. And obviously, our ordinance, based on the length and the time frame where this partnership and this topic emerged and is being implemented, not only us, but not even San Francisco has made any changes to their ordinances. They're adopting this because industry experts that we are part of as part of regulatory agencies throughout the United States and non-government agencies all agree that this concept will be beneficial for drivers. So that's an agreement from the industry experts.
I love to listen to experts. Go ahead.
But once again, it just started in November. That is why our ordinance, or any ordinance for that matter, in any city, which are not many, just San Francisco, and even LA and Orange County, if this happens, their ordinance will not reflect these particular details, if you will,
right,
that will be hashed out. But in reference to the section that you're mentioning, when that's the intention of that, or the spirit of that section, it means that if a PUC vehicle that's licensed by the PUC, and that is the difference. Taxi cabs are licensed locally by us and will always be. So in San Francisco, I think to place this concept in perspective, a taxi cab will remain a taxi cab at all times. Just if the only thing that this provides is for those drivers who voluntarily choose to become and to probably obtain more compensation or additional income by utilizing the Uber app. And like Mr. Wessel mentioned, there are many drivers. I believe Mr. Seifu, correct me if I'm wrong. They have the liberty to choose to work as a taxi cab driver and then to work as an Uber driver with a different vehicle. This, according to the industry experts, allows that particular driver more flexibility on how to ultimately obtain more compensation. So what I can say is that depending on the results, which we will be closely monitoring, not only here in San Diego, but with other cities. I spoke to the regulator in San Francisco last week to obtain preliminary data. And that's how we know, we presented to this committee, that preliminary data shows in San Francisco that taxi cab trips have gone up. I'll be more than glad to present, if this committee so wishes, at future meetings, updates on how is that working, not only in San Francisco, in other cities, or more particular here in San Diego.
I'm not speaking that you don't know what the ordinance says, but I was just trying to point out an example, and I think you stated it, that for our drivers, it's going to be confusing. I mean, we're going to understand this here maybe, but this is our first time discussion, but I'd use that section only to present that people can read stuff, but you go all through the ordinance and read sections about who can't do this and what can't do that, but you have to be really careful to see that references a taxi cab ride or an elevator. You have to read the whole sentence and look at particular words, that whole sentence refers to a taxi cab or a vehicle ride, a particular kind of vehicle ride. Our drivers aren't lawyers. So the meaning of the regulation, what I'm just saying is that this is going to dissipate and confuse because the regulation, just like you said, isn't dealing with the details. Drivers are going to have a lot of questions about, well, why don't these, who falls under this and when do they do? So what you're saying is a taxi driver, in this case, will go out of service as a taxi driver when he answers the Uber call. And when he's done with the Uber call and he's off, then he's a taxi driver again. Is that right?
No, a taxi cab driver will always be subject to MTS permitting in those taxi cab regulations. That's why.
Even when he's operating the Uber ride?
As an Uber ride, and if you're going to this as far as the flag drop with Mr.
No,
Johnson?
I'm asking, but I'm taking your example.
Yes.
If I'm a taxi cab driver and I'm a member of Yellow Cab and I pick an Uber ride, what you're telling me is that when I pick that Uber ride, I go on and I say yes. Now I don't fall under MTS regulation. I'm under Uber regulation. I'm under the TNC regulations, right? And I'm off your regulations and I stay off your regulations until I end that call and I'm done. Is that right?
In terms of the upfront pricing,
In terms of whatever,
well, I'm
in
trying to
terms
answer.
of ordinance 11, am I off your jurisdiction when I'm operating an Uber ride? If I'm a taxi?
No.
driver? You're not, I'm not.
No, a taxi driver shall at all times abide by ordinance 11 in terms of displaying the taxi cab ID, in terms of having the vehicle properly marked. That vehicle is a taxi and will always be a taxi. The only difference is that vehicle is that trip that our duly permitted taxi cab vehicle is providing is an Uber trip because it was secured through the Uber app, and therefore the Uber rate at that time applies. That is in essence what this looks like.
Yeah, really quick, because I'm
Okay.
hearing a little bit of it. We can probably go back and forth on this for a bit. And Samantha, you might need, it might be helpful for you to provide some clarity later on as well. Lenny's doing a good job, but I'm hearing a distinction between the taxi driver and the car, right? And which of those is being regulated at individual times? Because Peter was asking about the driver. Lenny, I heard in your answer, you were referencing the car itself. And there's a nuanced difference there that's probably an important one. So just for the sake of keeping the conversation moving, we've got to wrap up relatively soon. And I want to make sure we get through our other items, but I think this is why it was important to start the conversation now, right? To hear what sort of questions there are, what sort of confusion there may be. Is the driver at all times regulated under MTS regulations?
Certainly.
Is the driver or the car, are they playing by different rules at different times? These are things that sound like they might be a topic of conversation later on. I'm glad we're getting the conversation started now. We'll just kind of work our way down the row here. Abel, Agustin, and then we've got a couple more comments after that.
Mr. Chair, if you can put me on the queue too.
Yes.
Since I started this whole mess.
Yes.
Well, before you do that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to interrupt because I think Peter started something that was very important and Lenny started in the beginning, and there needs to be clarity now. And the
Yeah.
clarity is, he said something's being worked out. It sounds like something already got worked out. Is that true or not?
Hold on, Tony.
Well, it's because it's
Let's
getting
go-
kind of
yeah.
convoluted here.
Yeah, let's go this way, and then if there continues to be some questions, we'll make sure that this conversation. Hold on. We're gonna go this way, and then everyone will have a chance to speak. I also want to make sure we get through our agenda.
Okay, I'll make
Okay.
it quick. So just my concern, I like this idea, by the way, just working yellow cab with Uber, trust me, it's gonna help the driver that's sitting for 2-3 hours to get the next fare, it's an option for the driver to think about. So I really support that idea. But I'm worried about how things gonna work out at the airport. Because this thing is not discussed. What's gonna happen when a driver gonna go pick up a fare from the airport? Are they gonna get a space or are they gonna get like how things, this thing I never been mentioned on the agenda item. So I just want to know if Mr. Mark will say something about this issue because the big
Why,
topic.
why don't I answer that question when it comes around to me and all?
Yeah, so, and what we can also do, we're getting a pretty good lengthy list of questions now. And I think what we can take away from this conversation, we can draw the whole list of questions out, right? Who's regulated when, what's regulated when?
Yeah.
How's it gonna work at the airport? And we can come back to this conversation later on with specific answers to those questions so that Lenny's not on a firing with a firing squad in front of him, firing off questions that he probably can't know all the answers to right now. So we'll park that question.
Yeah,
We'll come
that's
back
gonna
to
be
it
my
later on.
question. Yeah.
And,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, Mr. Gillian.
I have a question. Okay, so when, if this deal comes through, is it gonna be through a Yellow Cab app or can I have my own cell phone and get those calls? How is that gonna work out?
So I think the answer to that is it would work through the Uber app, I believe.
No.
But,
No.
okay, so
Yellow Cab?
Go around the room and I'll answer all the questions at the
Okay.
end.
So
Fair enough.
we're probably not gonna have time for that. I'm gonna be honest. So what we'll do is this.
But it seems like that everybody has information and they're all inaccurate. So maybe I should start talking and give some information.
So folks are asking questions.
Please do.
Yeah, folks are asking questions. So we'll add that to the list of questions. That we'll come back and revisit at the next meeting.
Mr.
We're gonna
Chair.
go one at a time.
know,
And
always.
Mr.
you'll-
Chair, can we solve this right now?
No, we can't.
Why
We're gonna
not?
go,
Not-
we're gonna go one at a time. We're gonna go one at a time. You'll have your chance. Okay. Mr. Ger,
I think this will benefit the passengers, number one, Yellow Cab, number two, and Uber, number three. I'm not gonna ask a question because I've been already asked about the airport permits, is that gonna work? And then this, do a driver have to join Yellow to get Uber? Just a question and that's it.
thank you. We'll put that on the list.
Okay,
Mr.
my
Banks?
question, and maybe for Mark, later on he can answer. How about if the people log into the airport, they're going to pick up, how about the charge, the trip fee charge? Would they charge them for Uber, charge them for the airport? It's just my question. When we get to you, you can answer that. And I know the Yellow Cab have the answer to the question. Does someone have to have a tablet to be able to get something from for Uber, wherever? So, and when the question get to you, you take care. So I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Margot, then Mr. Taste.
The insurance, we're right, we have insurance on the taxis. Uber has a different system for insurance. What about that? Because if we're taking an app from Uber, who's covering the insurance? And the other thing is background checks. My taxi license that started in 78 is an FBI background check. I know they do background checks running the computer, but they don't do the FBI stuff, which sometimes comes in very handy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taysom?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm hearing all this about the Uber and the integration, and as Lenny has said, this is a start. I think for right now, we should just table this till the next meeting, until he's got more information and more of the ACBAR information comes forward. And then a subcommittee maybe needs to be formed about this. And the purposes of maybe going to San Francisco and see how it's actually being run for a couple days. Maybe a couple of committee members can go up there with Mr. Feedwell and see what's going on and see how it works and see if we can adapt it.
Unfortunately, this will mean that we have to exit the building and may have to stop the meeting here.
please leave the building 7 years X or X